Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings to the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 748, Autumn Overlooked My Knitting. Now, this poem is fascinating because most scholars believe that when she's referencing knitting here, she's actually referencing the construction of her poems. And when she's referencing autumn, she's actually referencing possibly someone, maybe more than one someone. Here, that idea possibly being Sam Boyles, who maybe she'll want to argue didn't fully appreciate or understand what her knitting was and how compelling it was. Now, of course, autumn poems are not unusual for us. You'll remember poem 131, besides the autumn poets sing, a few prosaic days, a little this side of the snow and that side of the haze, a few incisive mornings, a few aesthetic eves, gone. Mr. Bryant's golden rod and Mr. Thompson's sheaves. Still is the bustle in the brooks, sealed are the spicy vows, mesmeric fingers softly touch the eyes of many elves. Perhaps a squirrel may remain, my sentiments to share. Grant me, O Lord, a sunny mind, thy windy will to bear. It's interesting as we get into into these poems and our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down the left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 747 poems. We just finished with 747. It dropped so low. And if you've done this reading with us, when you get to a poem like this, you begin to think, you know, there's multiple ways to read so many of these poems that have to do with maybe seasons, for example, autumn. And it may have something to do with Emily's critiquing of herself as poet, as writer, and trying to be given the proper respect. Do you guys remember when we did 483? A solemn thing within the soul to feel itself get ripe and golden hang while further up the maker's ladder stop, and in the orchard far below you hear a being drop, a wonderful to feel the sun still tolling at the cheek. You thought was finished, cool of eye and critical of work, emphasis on work, right? He shifts the stem a little to give your core a look, but solemnness to know your chance in harvest moves a little nearer, every sun the single to some lives. Notice here sun, i.e. summer, but now notice we're dealing with autumn in the poem that we're about to study. You'll remember 656. The name of it is autumn, in quotation marks. The hue of it is blood, an artery upon the hill, a vein along the road. We're going to get to the color of blood in this poem. Great clouds in the alleys, and oh, the shower stain when winds upset the basin and spill the scarlet rain. It sprinkles bonnets far below, it gathers rooty pools, then eddies like a rose away upon vermilion wheels. Now, Ruth Miller has made this comment about this poem. She'll say it this way, quote, Emily compares her poems of many colors to the natural phenomenon of autumn, and she is not bested by nature. And then she finishes, perhaps the dusker color means that she has a wider range than other poets. Emily loves to play games with words, and this is one of those great poems that demonstrates it. Autumn overlooked my knitting. Dyes, said he, have I, could disparage a flamingo. Show me them, said I. Cautionel I chose for deeming it resemble thee, and the little border dusker for resembling me. This is a poem about choosing. It is a poem about reconciling with the choosing and reconciling with the fact that maybe certain people, certain readers, for example, don't fully appreciate the work that she is producing. You will remember when we studied early on 441, This is my letter to the world that never wrote to me, that poem ends with judge tenderly of me. I think this is a poem maybe about judging. Notice autumn, the key word here is overlooked my knitting. Now, overlooked here can have multiple meanings. It's almost as if autumn is challenging her knitting by saying, I have more beautiful colors than anything that you can produce. Of course, if you read this poem, though, as symbolic or figuratively, then I think her argument is that there was criticism of my knitting, my poetry, because it didn't have the right hue, the right colors, the right dyes. And then, of course, the he, that is autumn, could be the he that is, for example, a Sam Boyles, that publisher at the Springfield Republican, for example. Notice Autumn speaks, personifying autumn as, I have colors that could disparage a flamingo, back to poem 291. She said, "Show me then," said I. Again, we named our series here Chats with Emily for a number of reasons, this being one more of those. Said I. And then Cauchnel, in 5 poems, we'll see this word used. We'll see it again in 1059 and 1463 if you want to run it to ground. I chose that the colors of autumn for deeming it resemble thee, i.e. autumn, and the little border dusker for resembling me. In other words, making the comparison between what others want and what she wants. And I think that's the point at 2A of this poem. The best artists they're happy with the choices that they make, even though autumn or critiquers might have something other to say. At 2B, well, I think the personification of nature here in knitting is quite brilliant. At 3A, I think Keats is standing behind many of Emily's poems about poetry. Here, for example, To Autumn comes to mind, as well as To a Nightingale or Ode on a Grecian Urn. We've given full lectures on all of that at learnstrong.net. Keats was tuned in to the whole notion of being a poet who appreciates poetics. Emily, I think, is very much the same kind of poet. Finally, at 3B, what was a time when you chose the right colors for your knitting, whatever that knitting was? Thank you.